Hello and welcome back to the Scenario 7 podcast. My name is Sam and this week I'm joined by the regular Mr. Joe Roberts. First of all, Joe, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Sam. How are you?
I am doing very well and we're joined by a special guest. Josh is ill again, not for the first time, but we've replaced him with an unbelievable guest. Is Mr. Alex Albon, impersonator himself. It's Matthew Collier. Matt, how are you doing, mate?
I'm very well, thank you, Sam. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
No worries. It's great to have you on, and it is a great race review to have you on for because we are doing a Russian Grand Prix race review. It was action-packed. I am buzzing off of it. Heartbreak and joy, both sides of the coin in this one. And first of all, let's get both of your general thoughts on the race. Did you enjoy it? What do you think?
Yes, I did. I did enjoy it. It was looks like the preview where you basically slated the Russian Grand Prix worked and made a very exciting race, which is a surprise. But yeah, it was very, 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 very good race. It was heartbreak, I would say, and obviously Hamilton with his 100th win, which is an amazing achievement in itself, which I don't think anybody will ever achieve. But apart from that, it was a brilliant race and battles throughout the field.
I mean, it was chaos at the end, but the strategists must have been scratching their head quite a lot in that race. I definitely was. You had like Alonso and Leclerc still going long, you had people on 2-stop or 1-stop, and then you had the rain at the end, which definitely spiced things up.
It was really an interesting race, full of all types of emotions. Let's get the weekend started, getting the review started with qualifying because this was the start of the weekend. There's not much really to say about Q1 or Q2 because all the drama happened in Q3. The only things I'll mention is in Q1, Verstappen didn't set a time. He was coming last anyway. It didn't really matter. And in Q2, Leclerc and Latifi didn't set a time because both of them were going to take penalties and getting into Q2 ensured neither of them start last. But Q3, wow, this is when it got interesting. Hamilton hitting the wall in the pits, Lando Norris on pole, Sainz, his former best friend at McLaren in second, now at Ferrari, and Russell in third. I mean, sum up that Q3. How do you sum it up? Because it was carnage. Hamilton bottled it, and some fantastic drivers that I think no one disliked capitalized.
I think mainly it's just describe qualifying is basically describing the race mayhem. I think Lewis Hamilton, as you said, bottled it, but in the race could have bottled it if it wasn't for his team demanding him to come in the pits. So I think it's two halves of the coin. I think Hamilton got qualifying wrong, but he then, as usual, delivers in the race.
Yeah, I mean, Joe's said most of it there. Hamilton, I don't know, it feels like he's making more mistakes now that he's got a massive title fight with Verstappen. And then obviously Hamilton, with no front wing, held up Bottas, which meant that they didn't get to warm up their tyres. And yeah, George Russell in the wet. Well, if it rains every qualifying session, then he might be getting in the top three quite a lot. So yeah, very, very surprising top three, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, totally. And Carlos Sainz in there as well was pretty awesome. And the top three really did set up a great race because we had none of the title contenders really. Well, there's only two, Verstappen and Hamilton. Verstappen was starting last, Hamilton was starting fourth, so there was going to be overtaking. That was almost a dead certain, and the last few laps of the race were just unbelievable. I'll go through the incidents quickly in terms of who retired and that. because there's not really much going into detail about because no one retired due to like a crash or anything. On lap 34, Mick Schumacher retired. And then, I'm not going to lie, watching the race, I just all of a sudden looked to the bottom of the screen and I was like, oh, Nicholas Latifi's DNF'd. When did that happen? So after the race, I scrolled through Twitter, I scrolled through the Williams, the F1. No one mentioned. I don't even think Williams realised. He just all of a sudden just wasn't racing. It was so weird. And who knows what went wrong. He had a nightmare weekend. I feel bad for him because he's been really good recently. But I cannot tell you what lap it was on, as who knows when it happened. But I want to get on to the main talking points, the post-race talking points. We'll get on to the big juicy ones later on. But first of all, Lance Stroll. He got a post-race 10-second penalty for contact with Gasly, which basically had a detrimental effect on his race. Gasly had a nightmare weekend because everyone basically just got in his way or hit him. I felt really bad for him. And then also he hit his teammate out of total just not seeing him at all. He was looking at the corner, just had zero awareness, which is really poor. But what do you make of the two incidents with Stroll, guys?
Very short for words, but you basically summed it up perfectly. I think the one with Gasly, Stroll just being an idiot. And then again, Stroll and Vettel, he's just a bit clueless and just I think Anthony Davidson was analysing it where Stroll was, as you can see, was looking at the corner rather than looking in his mirror and then just basically squeeze Vettel, which could have caused a massive crash and basically took both of them out. And they're very lucky with that.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have been a fly in the Aston Martin team briefing because I just don't know what Stroll was doing. I felt Vettel maybe was trying to go for a move that wasn't there, but then they hit each other not once but twice. So yeah, I'd love to be in that team briefing, that's for sure.
Yeah, I saw it pan to Lawrence Stroll, who was having a very angry, what it looked like, conversation with Vettel, and I was kind of sitting there thinking, hold up there, Vettel's really done nothing wrong. It's Stroll who's just put him in a wall and then hit his back tyre. It was his fault, but just quickly, 10-second penalty for the contact with Gasly. Do you think that's fair?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, I think that's a full house of agreeing with that. Stroll was just a bit of an idiot, and Gasly just again really unlucky. Next talking point, and I know Joe is angry about this, and it was Verstappen and Bottas. Before the race, Bottas took an engine penalty, which was a bit weird after taking an engine penalty the race before in Monza. And I saw him share on social media after the race a little meme about him taking an engine penalty every race, and which was a bit of I think a cheap jab at Mercedes. But he was put there, I think, he took an engine penalty it's my personal opinion anyway, I don't know what you guys think, was to block off Verstappen, stop him from getting as many points. And he got to lap 6 and Verstappen was gaining on Bottas, and Bottas did not defend at all, and Verstappen went through really easily. David Coulthard made the comment after while the race was going on, asking the question, is Bottas going to Alfa Romeo or Alfa Tauri next season, making it seem like he just really doesn't care about the team. And it almost looked like Red Bull had asked him to do that. But I want to get your guys' point of view. Was Bottas disobeying the team? Was he going against the team, or was it just the fact that what he said, which was he just couldn't see him coming? I mean, what do you guys think? Because I know, Joe, you think he should have done a lot more to defend.
Matt, do you want to do this?
I'll let you go first.
I'm gonna probably absolutely screw Bottas here in a way that I've had sympathy for him for basically the last I would say, year and a half, just due to the fact that he's Hamilton's teammate. But he's turning a bit like an old granny when defending against, like, especially like Max, in the way that it was very tentative, very useless, and it was basically no point him actually being in this race, even though he finished 5th, because he got, for me, extremely lucky with the decisions, obviously, to get him 5th. And I don't think he made a very decent overtake that he should. All the overtakes he made, he should make anyway. And Bottas, it gets to a point where his defending is worse than Mazepin, as in is on the opposite end of Mazepin. Mazepin's way aggressive. Bottas like, oh, you're going for the corner. I'll just turn out. It's a bit, yeah. It's embarrassing. I think the fact that he's in the fastest car and he's getting outbraken by an absolute mile by Max Verstappen, because he came out of absolute nowhere and Bottas should have just turned in on him. And due to the fact that Hamilton can't trust a wingman like Bottas anymore. And yeah, I think I was on the fence if it was the right decision, Mercedes putting Russell into Mercedes. And it's basically confirmed that Russell is the right man to lead or to go to Mercedes and be potentially Hamilton's wingman to protect him, because Bottas is like a fly, very weak, very feeble driver.
Yeah, I mean, Joe's basically explained everything there. I'd say Bottas basically got a get out of jail free card that race, because he wasn't exactly having the best of races, and then as soon as it rained, Mercedes basically gave a get out of jail free card. So yeah, Bottas definitely escaped the very poor result thanks to Mercedes strategists.
His good result was due to Mercedes strategists. It definitely wasn't down to him racing well. It was funny because Mercedes, Toto Wolff went on the radio to Hamilton and was like, you can win this race. Lewis won this race. And then a team strategist went on the radio to Bottas and he was like, you can get top 5. And I was sitting there thinking, there is no way Bottas is getting top 5. He can't overtake Kimi Raikkonen. I mean, there is zero way he's getting top 5. And then all of a sudden the rain comes, a sensational tactical decision. And he somehow comes 5th. I mean, it was miraculous. The point you made there, Joe, about George Russell being a better wingman as well. In the first stint, it was George Russell was holding up so many cars. It was ridiculous. He literally had Hamilton was getting so frustrated because he was stuck behind. I think it was Russell, Stroll, Ricciardo, then Hamilton, just all in a little DRS train. Because as Russell said before the race, the Williams on the straights is very quick. The cornering is not good, but on the straight, it's solid. And as it's quite hard to overtake here, it didn't prove that way this time, but as it normally is, Russell kept him behind. So Russell definitely is better defensively than Bottas. And I know you're frustrated, Joe, but we need to remember that Bottas is a great driver and that this is just, I'm sure, a one-off. However,
no. I'm not having this. It hasn't been a one-off. It's been, I would say, for this season, a wingman. As in, or even like defending. I forgot what race it was.
Zandvoort.
He basically just let. Sorry.
Was it Zandvoort?
Yeah, Zandvoort. Just let him through. Even though he was on the bad tire, he didn't do anything to defend it. To basically compromise Mercedes' strategy. So then the strategists of Mercedes had to do something else. There was another race where Max suddenly went swooping past, like he's not, like Bottas isn't there. It's yes, he's a great driver. Yes, he is, and he's going to Alfa Romeo. But if he wants to keep his seat for like the next, like for that contract, he needs to have some oomph in him just to turn in or defend hard. because he's been very, I don't know, just very tentative in the way that he drives. It's just people can just literally slide it on the inside, and he's afraid of making contact. And that's also the difference between, I think, Russell and Bottas, as you said, is very better at defending because he's like prefers to turn in on people. But
yeah, no, that is yeah, it probably hasn't been his first off race. I was talking to someone while watching the race, I had a few people around, and they were like, it gets to a point where Valtteri Bottas just decides which week he's going to try, because you have amazing weeks like Monza where he did really well. And then you have this week where he just didn't, as you say, defend. He did barely overtook. He did really struggle. But let's move on to what everyone wants us to talk about, and that is Mr. Lando Norris. Heartbreak, absolute heartbreak this weekend for the young Brit, because at the front of the grid, it was a fight between a guy going for his 100th win and a guy going for his first win. And unfortunately, having a great strategy team and the experience of Hamilton paid off. But when it got to that wet stint, they made an incorrect call. I don't think anyone argues with that. They had to come in because his tyres were shot. It wasn't necessarily the tyres, it was just that the tyres didn't adapt to couldn't deal with the conditions because he was on slicks, and it was, especially in Sector 2, Inter's weather, and it was getting heavier. So my question to you guys is, who is to blame for this? Because Lando Norris did make the call. He said he didn't want to come in. However, the team passed on incorrect data saying it was going to rain, but it's not going to get heavier. So who do you think was at fault for this incident?
That's a hard one. I think it's a mixture of both. I think I'm more leaning towards the team in this one. I know Lando Norris himself says it's him, that he made the call and whatever, but also the fact that, as we probably talk about Hamilton, the team told him to get in, as in like demanded him in the pit. So they could have done that. I think having the incorrect weather data, I think somehow McLaren need to update their weather forecasts and maybe go to a different service like Apple, BBC News weather. No, I'm just joking. As in, like, just I don't know. They need to get, if they got the weather conditions correct, I think they would have gone in. As in, then everybody went in except from the McLarens for some dumb reason, I don't know. But I think you can also blame Norris in just when seeing that gap go down, they should have just pitted and abandoned the win and just go for podium.
Yeah, I mean, it's very 50-50, to be honest. I felt the team should have gave Norris more information. They should have told him that the rain's going to get worse within the next few laps. But yeah, Norris was like sliding all over the place for quite a few laps already before the team told him to box. So yeah, I mean, Joe's basically explained most of it there already. So I definitely think it's a 50-50 for me.
Yeah, it's tough because I was watching Ricciardo's interview after the race, and he was just like, I went round and I was just like, no, this isn't, I cannot keep going in this. We have to pit. While Lando, I think, just was like in his head thinking, we are so few laps away from my first race win. The person I'm racing has just pit and is now like 30 seconds behind me, and was slightly naive in the fact that he thought he could hold on. Even Hamilton didn't want to pit. He just basically listened to his race engineer, which was very lucky in the end, because the problem was that Lando's race engineer was very, let's leave it to your call, and didn't give him as much information. I think that was due to the fact that in qualifying, when Lando got pole, he did get asked by the team, what should we go on? And he said, let's go for softs. And they were like, right, let's put softs on. And then he got pole. So the team, I think, have looked at this and been like, right, Lando made an excellent call in qualifying. It put him on pole. He's the one racing out there. He knows what the conditions is like. Let's trust him. And unfortunately, the call didn't pay off. I think the team should have really overruled him and been like, come in. But clearly they misinterpreted the weather data wrong, because I feel like every team has access to the same weather data. It's just about who interprets it, because the Mercedes were so adamant. They're like, by the way, the rain's getting heavier. And the McLaren garage were like, we don't think it will get heavier. So they've basically interpreted it different ways, which at the end of the day has cost a very talented driver in Lando Norris his race, and gutting, absolutely gutting. But on the other side of the coin, Lewis Hamilton, 100 wins. Wow. 100 wins is unbelievable. The only person who gets close is Michael Schumacher, who I think has 91. I think it's 91, 93. I think it's 91. And Lewis has even beaten that record, which looked so hard to beat. Bear in mind, Michael won so many titles, but if anything, Hamilton has eclipsed that. Well, actually, let me pose the question. Has Hamilton eclipsed that? Is Hamilton the greatest driver of all time? There's no right or wrong answer. This is purely down for interpretation. But who do you think is the greatest driver of all time? Because I don't think there's many records Lewis can smash yet.
I think this is what side of the, I would say, allegiance to. If you're British, you probably say Hamilton. If you're a Ferrari fan, you probably say Schumacher. If you're Brazilian, you probably say Senna. I never got the chance to see Senna, but he's, for me, always will be the greatest. Just the fact you could looking at all the documentaries and that. But I think the way that Hamilton's going, if he gets the 8th world title, he's broken. And then I think he is. I think there's arguments to say, oh, he's in the greatest car. Or, you know what I mean, as in had the best car for 7 years. But then again, he took the risk from McLaren to go to Mercedes. He then did what Michael Schumacher arguably did, went to Benetton and then to Schumacher. If you watch the Schumacher documentary film that's on Netflix, it's kind of the same story in the way that Ferrari weren't a very good team, basically went out and did basically the hard work to get to basically being the fastest car on the grid and just beat his teammate. And that's what Lewis Hamilton's done. And he's done that for 7 years, except from, I think, 2016, sorry. So to answer your question, my personal opinion, it is Senna, just due to the fact of how class the driver was. And I thought he could probably win another 4 world titles. No, sorry, another 2 world titles to his, I think, 3 that we won. But it's down, again, it's down to interpretation of what you think, who is the world title, because of allegiance and how you evaluate what is the dominant car in that period.
Yeah, for me, it's very hard to compare all the different F1 decades, especially with how much F1's changed, even just like the basic thing as a steering wheel. In Senna's time, there was none of the 50,000 buttons on a wheel kind of thing. But I mean, Senna was superb driver. He definitely would have got more world titles if it wasn't for his crash. And I mean, nobody thought anyone was going to beat Schumacher's record. I mean, Hamilton, I remember Hamilton, when people thought Hamilton was going to go from when Hamilton went from McLaren to Mercedes, everyone thought, what is he doing? Why has he done this move? I remember Jeremy Clarkson said that you've basically moved from Man United to West Ham, and well, boy, did he prove people wrong. Yeah, so for me, it's very hard to compare who's the greatest of all time because of how much F1's changed over the years, really.
Yeah, I would go for Lewis Hamilton, to be honest. I think for me, he is the greatest driver of all time. I think that, yes, Ayrton Senna's raw pace, I don't think will be seen again in terms of, I don't think anyone in terms of raw pace has or will have what Senna had. Unbelievable, just watching him, the way he controlled it, unreal. Schumacher had so much success. He was excellent. His rise for Benetton to Ferrari, as you said, it's quite similar to the move from McLaren to Mercedes. It was a calculated risk. It paid off, but Lewis is smashing every record. I think he's the most complete driver in terms of his overtaking, his raw pace, his qualifying, his defending. I genuinely don't think there'll be a more complete driver. I think he has it all. And 100 wins, 101 poles. He's got 7 world titles, potentially 8 if he wins this one. I personally don't think he will. I think Max will pin him to it. But even if he does, I still think he is the greatest because, in my opinion, there's no one as complete a driver as Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, I sorry, Sam. I do agree with that. As I think the weird thing with Lewis, if you look at all his teammates like Alonso, Heikki Kovalainen, I think then it was obviously Jenson Button, and then Rosberg, and then Bottas. Every time he stepped up, delivered. Maybe Jenson Button, I think that was probably the closest rivalry I personally think he had. I don't think I think Alonso got outdone by a rookie. And he's taken all the different styles. For example, Button's very good on his tires, very smooth. And then Alonso, very just raw pace in qualifying. Heikki, I think he was very good at being a wingman. I don't really think you took any style out of him. And then Bottas, I think, again, I don't think he took really much style with him. But then Nico Rosberg, I think, got the proper how to race quick, you have to be consistent. Obviously, having those battles, I think twice throughout the season when they were teammates. So I think to go back to the complete driver, I think he's learned from his teammates. He's adapted to his own style to work the tires to his tire management is amazing, and qualifying is amazing, is an oval race pace. So he's a very complete driver, as you said, Sam.
Yeah, he really is. And despite the woes of Lando Norris, there needs to be joy as well for Lewis Hamilton, because he's a legend of the sport and he deserved that 100 win. He's been waiting for it for a while, but he's finally got it. Let's move on to our team by team breakdown, where we analyse how everyone did on Sunday, potentially talk a bit about strategy, basically whatever went on. And we'll start at the front of the grid with the 2 title contenders, Mercedes and Red Bull. We've talked a lot about Hamilton. We've talked a bit about Bottas. So you can still mention them, but we might as well skip over them. But let's talk a bit more about Verstappen. We can't go this podcast without highlighting how well he did. 20th to second. Sensei. He couldn't have done any more. He really could not have.
Sam, sorry, Matt.
No, it's fine. You go.
Oh, I just thought Max was very, very lucky with the weather. I think he would have been at ease. He was going to be absolutely screwed on his tires. I think Ocon or Alonso was chasing him down and overtaking him. He was, for me, very, very lucky. I don't think it was skill, Sam, as you probably are going to say, because Perez suddenly went to third to ninth when he was comfortably going to be there. So, yeah, I don't think Red Bull got the maximum points they could get, but also I don't think it was a very, very good day in terms of strategy.
Well,
until the rain.
Joe, what we do is I put forward a question of how did they do, and then you answer it. You don't need to butt in, but I appreciate you're very passionate about your point, and that's fair enough. But still, a word on the battle between Mercedes and Red Bull. We'll start with Matt because Joe has put in a bit of his answer about Verstappen. But yeah, how do you think the Mercedes and Red Bull compared this weekend?
Before going into Russian Grand Prix, I thought this was going to be a nailed on Mercedes 1-2. But I mean, Verstappen getting second from starting last, I don't think anyone would have expected that. It's massive for his championship battle as well. Perez and Bottas, I mean, the less said about them, the better, probably. Yeah, but all in all, Hamilton, brilliant drive. Verstappen, I felt like he definitely was pushing too hard on his tyres. So maybe the rain did save in the end, but I think both of them will be very happy.
Joe, any?
Oh, and I haven't mentioned Perez in my first part, which I do apologise in interrupting you there. I thought you gave the question.
No, it's okay.
But yeah, I just to add something onto Perez, I think he is extremely lucky that he's got a Red Bull contract, because he was very, very, I would say, probably less pathetic than Bottas at trying to overtake or defend, but he very lucky he's got a contract for next season.
Yeah. I'm gonna defend Perez in a moment, but I'd like to add on Verstappen. What more could he done? Yes, he got lucky with the wet weather. I'm pretty sure a lot of drivers did with the strategy calls there, and some drivers got unlucky, aka Perez. But Verstappen couldn't really have done much more. He was overtaking cars very well. Admittedly, some of them didn't defend, aka Bottas, but he still did all he could to get second. Did he deserve second? You buy your own luck in F1. He got lucky. It was his call to come in early, to be fair, and that call was spot on. So I think he deserves second, and he does deserve credit. Moving on to Perez, he has admittedly dropped off a bit of a cliff. He started the season pretty well, and he was looking like a really solid driver, but it seems like the second seat, Hoodoo has taken control of the car again. However, he was very unlucky throughout this race. First of all, his pit stop, 8.9 seconds. That is terrible. This is Red Bull, Mr. Oh, we can do it in less than 2 seconds. We're the only team that can do that. We did it in 1.88 seconds once, but then do an 8.9. I'd rather they were just consistently banging out 2.5s rather than trying every time, oh, we're going to go for 1.88. So that completely compromised him, bearing in mind he was in first. Admittedly, hadn't pit and everyone else had, but he really stretched those tyres out well. So his first stint was sensational. He was looking really fast in that. And then his second stint, again, was looking good. He was looking great. However, then the wet came and his team made the call to bring him in a bit later. And it was a flip of a coin, to be honest, for a lot of people. Some people paid off. Some people it didn't. I think that Perez was very unlucky on Sunday. I won't defend his qualifying. It wasn't great, but I will defend his race because, to be honest, I don't think he could have done much more. Just quickly on the Mercedes, Hamilton did amazing. Bottas was lucky, and that's all because we've discussed them enough. But yeah, let's move on to the battle below the title fight, but just above the midfield, going for the Europa League spots. It's McLaren and Ferrari. It was a better weekend for McLaren than it was Ferrari. That's without doubt. However, it could have been an amazing weekend for McLaren, but it didn't work out that way. We've talked about Norris. He did get fastest lap in the end. Ricciardo, really underrated race, did really well, 5th to 4th. Leclerc just had a nightmare, and Sainz again did literally everything spot on, nothing he could do. But what did you think of the battle between McLaren and Ferrari?
I think it's probably just going to be quite short because you basically summed it up, because Lando Norris very heartbreaking for him, finishing 7th in the end. I think he would have won it if he made the correct call. And then Ricciardo, as you said, very solid race. Leclerc, solid race until the rain, which then kind of screwed him up. And then Carlos, I wasn't going to say he got lucky, but again, you have to be there to get on the podium, and that's what he did. So yeah, Carlos Sainz has been very solid, and he's, I think, kind of understanding the Ferrari a lot more. And also he looks like he's outperforming Leclerc a lot more as well.
Yeah, just on that, I think Sainz has actually got more points than Leclerc, and I think he actually might have more podiums than Leclerc as well. Not entirely sure on that, but yeah, I mean, Sainz looks really confident in that Ferrari. I was a bit surprised at the start of the season if he was going to take him a few races, but I mean, he's definitely hit the ground running. I felt Ferrari definitely could have got more, especially with Leclerc. I mean, 15th in a Ferrari. I mean, like, what is that? As for McLaren, I mean, they're definitely going to be devastated, especially with Norris. But all in all, they're doing what they need to do to beat Ferrari in the constructors, and that's their main ambition, really.
Yeah, no, completely right. I agree with the point that Carlos Sainz is now probably the main driver at Ferrari in terms of his performances. I think he was brought in to be equal but slightly below Leclerc because they didn't expect Sainz to necessarily, as you said, Matt, hit the ground running like he has. And I think he has got more podiums. I think you're right. Leclerc admittedly has more poles, but he did crash into the wall for one.
More red flag poles.
Exactly. He loves a red flag pole, and it never really worked out for him to win any of the races he got pole in. But yeah, Sainz is looking very impressive. And when we get towards the end of the season, we'll talk about who we think driver of the season. He is looking like a contender, I have to say. He is definitely looking like a contender because he has been really solid, really good. Let's move on to the 3 A's, or 3 out of 4 of the A's. AlphaTauri, Aston Martin, and Alpine. And 2 of these teams got 0 points, and one of them got 8, being carried by a world champion. But yeah, Gasly, wow, how unlucky does he have to be? I know I've mentioned it, but every time I see his name, I just think, you've just had such an unlucky weekend. Norris has had a really unlucky race today, but Gasly's whole weekend's just been really unlucky. Tsunoda, not really sure what to say. It's Tsunoda. He's just really underperforming. Vettel and Stroll, we talked about that, and Alonso, sensational. And to be honest, I forgot Ocon was racing. Did the cameras ever actually pick up on him?
Oh, he did when Max came out the pits.
Oh, well, there you go. So he was picked up once. So well done, Esteban. That's driver of the day for me. You were picked up on the cameras once. But yeah, how do you sum up this midfield battle? Because Alpine, despite not having, in my opinion, as quick a car as the AlphaTauri and potentially the Aston Martin, just based on A, Alonso, and B, based on just pure consistency, look like they're going to win this midfield battle.
Yeah, I think Alonso's doing what he did at McLaren and dragging a slower car to a very decent finish. And that's all you can say about Alpine. Ocon, I think, just had a very bad race. I wouldn't say it's worst of the season, but it was a very bad race for him. AlphaTauri, as you know, I love slating Tsunoda because he's been, for me, the second worst driver in the grid. He's been awful, causing more red flags and just being utterly appalling. And you could use probably stronger language. And then Gasly is basically carrying the team on his back, and Tsunoda and his car. So yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure on him, and it's just very unfortunate. And then Aston Martin, they're just tripping over each other. And that just sums up Aston Martin in general this season. They make their own faults, they drive into each other, and it just, again, just sums up AlphaTauri. No, sorry, Aston Martin.
Yeah, I mean, this midfield battle's crazy. 1 minute Aston Martin's doing really well, then AlphaTauri's doing really well, then Alpine's doing really well. Aston Martin, I mean, you just don't know what they're going to do, really. I mean, sometimes Vettel's on the podium, he's doing absolute blinder array. Sometimes he's spinning or he's at the back. I agree with Joe. I mean, Gasly's just completely carrying AlphaTauri. I mean, I don't understand how Tsunoda's got a seat for next year. I think it's mainly just because of sponsors. Alpine, I mean, Fernando Alonso, I mean, he had a brilliant race. He was overtaking Max Verstappen, to be fair. And I'm not sure, but I feel like maybe if there's more luck on Alonso, he could maybe get a podium. There's definitely been a lot of chaos this season. He just needs a bit more luck. But yeah, I mean, the midfield battle, I think it will definitely be swings and roundabouts for the rest of the season.
Yeah, Alonso definitely deserves a podium for his performances this season. Getting Ocon that win, he played a massive part in it. He's had so many good results now, and what a pleasure it is seeing the Spaniard back in the sport and doing well. He's happy in the car. It's not like at the end of McLaren where he was just livid at everything that was going on. And it's just great to see him happy. Great to see such a class driver in the sport doing so well. I want to mention Aston Martin because it's really weird because they started the season pretty poorly. And then it seems like they just had a really weird blue patch where they were just really good for this certain point. Like this, I think it started in Monaco and then you had it in a few races. They got unlucky in Hungary, but they were really good for a bit. And now they've just gone back to being really bad. It's Joe. I see.
I know it's wise because they're too excited for the James Bond film to come out.
There you go. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I hear Daniel.
As soon as the adverts came up, like from James Bond, they're doing terribly.
Yeah, no, I hear Daniel Craig is the reserve driver, so I'm looking forward to doing a Hulkenberg if something goes wrong. But yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's James Bond. How did I not think of that? But seriously, it's a really frustrating thing because I really want Aston Martin to do well. You know, British team, they have a driver lineup which I don't dislike. I love Vettel. Stroll's much more likable than he was, let's say, a few seasons ago, even if at the moment he's a bit of a wrecking ball. But it's frustrating to see, and I want to see them get up the grid. I think this season's a write-off now. I don't think they'll win the midfield battle. I just hope that next season they can get their act together and hopefully challenge at the front. We don't know who's going to challenge at the front next season with all the new regulations, but hopefully they're one of them. Let's move on to Alfa Romeo and Williams. There was a bit of time where we classed Williams in a class above Alfa Romeo, but Alfa Romeo got more points than Williams this week, so we're going to put them in the same category. Let's do a bit of a comparison. Giovinazzi, I'll start off with. Joe's going to slate him. And I'm not going to say anything because I honestly, again, another one who the cameras just never picked up on. And I just don't really understand what happened, but obviously something went wrong. Admittedly did start at the back and he did gain a place. So he moved up one. So that's positive. Exactly. What a drive. But his teammate, Kimi Raikkonen, wow, what a drive. I thought he would fail, to be honest, this week. I thought he'd just have a stinky, 2 weeks out of the car, just had COVID. No, bang. He comes back into the car, gets 8th. Unreal, because it's 4 points. Beats the Williams, which looked so much quicker than Alfa Romeo the last few weeks and did really well. Williams, Russell, and Russell did the best he probably could. I thought the Williams really struggled on the Sunday, actually, because Russell before the race was like, he was saying he had some faith that he could keep people behind him, maybe nick a podium because of the fact that he said that Williams had the best speed on the straights on the whole grid. And he definitely did really well in the first stint. The problem is when he pit, he just fell down the order. Then with Latifi, he was unlucky yesterday with an engine penalty and he DNF'd today. We don't know when, but apparently he DNF'd. So you can't really criticise him. So, Joe, I'm not going to let you criticise Latifi this week because I'm really starting to like him. And I think he's starting to show glimpses of potential. But, guys, let's talk about Alfa Romeo and Williams, how you think they compared. And let's base your conversation on Kimi Raikkonen. We need to give him the spotlight here. What a race.
I'll let Matt do that because I don't think Sam's gonna like what I say.
Oh no, Matt.
Yeah, I'll go first then. I mean, Kimi Raikkonen. I mean, he had COVID for 2 weeks. First time back in quite a bit. To be fair, I guess he probably didn't feel 100%. Because COVID can be a very long-lasting thing, and to finish P8 in that car. I mean, I remember his ridiculous race at Portimao, completely blitzing through the midfield. I think he got to like P7 at one point. And it will definitely be missed in this sport because he always somehow does amazing results in that Alfa Romeo. Williams, I mean, George Russell in the points. I mean, it's just like regular occurrence now, isn't it? He's definitely just performing. And even the car, I mean, they've developed that car so well since the start of the season. Giovinazzi, I mean, there's a reason why his seat is uncertain. I mean, it's the only seat that hasn't been revealed for next season. But all in all, Raikkonen P8, super drive, and then Russell in the points.
Am I going to have to cover my ears, Joe?
No. Well, I'm going to probably slate Giovinazzi more, so I'll go for the Alfa Romeo. I completely agree with Matt about Kimi Raikkonen due to the fact, it's been absolutely spectacular. Well, throughout, I think the whole of his career, being a wingman to Vettel, I would say being very much Bottas-like in a way to him. And today he showed his class and went up to 8th from 13th. But Giovinazzi, oh my word, he's rubbish. As in, you can you can argue about, yes, his qualifying's decent, but his race pace just dips down like the Haas does usually on his race pace. There's arguments to say he shouldn't have a seat. I think he shouldn't. I think the seat that Zhang Zhou, the Chinese driver that races, I think it's an Alpine Academy driver. Personally, he hasn't really performed in F2. I don't think he deserves that seat because he will literally turn into another Giovinazzi. But yeah, that's all I can say about Giovinazzi, is that he doesn't deserve to be in the sport. It's the same like Tsunoda and the same about Mazepin. So, which we'll probably get onto. And then it was the Williams. Latifi, I think, did all the best he could. Not a very good car in the race, just in general. And Russia's a very difficult track. I'm going to be quite critical on Williams for their strategy on Russell. I think they could have gone a lot further with their tyres, potentially stretch it out to a one-stop. Yes, lose track position, but they're going to have their basically tyres, preserve their tyres a lot more. And I personally think they could have got a higher result than 10th in the end. But yeah, again, Latifi couldn't do anything really. As you said, he just randomly retired.
Yeah, it was random. I just want to mention Giovinazzi. I have defended him several times. He really struggled today, and I've defended Giovinazzi because personally, I think he deserves to stay in the sport over Guan Yu Zhou. I'm saying over that driver because I don't think he showed the results in F2 necessary to get into F1. However, I've talked about Théo Pourchaire quite a lot, and how much I love the driver. I think he's going to be a world champion. It's too early for him. What more can fellow Alpine Academy driver Oscar Piastri do to get a seat in F1? He is smashing it in F2. I'm pretty sure, had joined with Russell, Leclerc, and someone else with the record for the most poles in a row. He's leading the Drivers' Championship. He's showing fantastic racecraft. He's showing great race pace. He is double the driver that Guan Yu Zhou is, and this is his first year in F2. And Guan Yu Zhou, I'm pretty sure, is in his third. If Guan Yu Zhou gets that seat, it's due to money. There's no doubt about it. He does not deserve that seat over someone like Oscar Piastri or Théo Pourchaire. Admittedly, as I said, Pourchaire's too early for. Piastri, I think, looks ready. If you win F2, I think you deserve a shot at F1. Admittedly, you shouldn't go down the Haas route of just going, let 2 rookies, put them in the car. We don't need any experience. You should have an experienced driver. And next season, I'll have Bottas, who would help the fellow driver. However, that should be Piastri, not Zhou. If it's Zhou, it deserves to be Giovinazzi, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree on, but that's my opinion, that Piastri deserves it a lot more than Guan Yu Zhou.
Yeah, I've watched F2 for the last couple of years, and Zhou's been. I think the first season was very good. I think he was close to winning it. I think he was nearly gonna win it until Callum Aylock and Mick Schumacher, who personally, again, I think should have been in both. Callum Aylock should have been in that Haas seat. But yeah, as you said, Oscar Piastri looks good. Again, there's arguments to say if you win the F2, you don't really deserve a move up, just due to the fact it's all about money in this sport. But I think Piastri should get it, just due to the fact that being a rookie, it is extremely hard to win win it on your first go. I can't remember who else won it with their first rookie. I think the only thing I can remember is Lewis Hamilton doing it. I can't remember. As in, there's not many.
I think Russell won his first.
Yeah, so
championship
Russell,
in
as in
F2.
you're comparing to drivers that are either of great F1 drivers or world champions that have won F2 just being from a rookie. So yeah, I think that should persuade Alfa Romeo to give him the seat.
I'd like to just add some points on that because Callum Aylock has done practice sessions for Alfa Romeo. Wanyu Zhou has done a practice session thing at Austria. I mean, Nick De Vries,
Yes.
one F2, one Formula E. I'd at least like to see him in some sort of practice session or just give him the chance, see what he can do in a Formula One car. And that's really all I wanted to add.
I completely agree. I genuinely don't know what more that man has to do to get an F1 seat. One F2, which is the feeder series, in my opinion, I think there should be a rule that says whoever wins Formula 2 has to be in a Formula 1. I don't know how that could work. It probably is unreasonable and couldn't work. However, if you win F2, in my opinion, you should be in an F1 seat next year, either as a reserve driver, but really, if a reserves driver is the best they can do in terms of a rule for that, fair enough. But in my opinion, they should have a main seat for next year. And Nick De Vries hasn't just won F2, as you said. He's won Formula E. He's literally won 2 titles against good drivers. The people in Formula E are no mugs. He really deserved that title. Admittedly, a few of them got unlucky. Stoffel Van Dorn got lucky, and the person, I've forgotten his name, who was going to probably win it, did end up not starting the race in the final race of the season. But Nick De Vries, it does infuriate me because he deserves to be in a seat. It was between him and Albon for the Williams seat. And Toto was pushing very hard. I don't think Toto could do any more to get him a seat. And to be honest, I don't blame them for choosing Albon just for the experience. I think he'd be a great driver. However, he has to be in a seat. He deserves a seat, and he won't have one. And I genuinely don't know why. And it's really, really frustrating. But moving on from that little rant about why Nick De Vries deserves an F1 seat and Oscar Piastri deserves the Alfa Romeo seat, let's talk about everyone's favourite team, Haas. Joe, you slate, and to be fair, I slate this team every week. Are you going to lay off on this? Or are you going to lay down?
Well, I think Josh's prediction of 2 laps down was very much correct. I think that describes what Haas, and that's all I'm going to say. As in, Schumacher retired from a fault and Mazepin being a lap down. Well, no, sorry, 2 laps down, a lap down on Tsunoda.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
Haas, I do feel sorry for Mick Schumacher. I remember watching the Netflix documentary of him sat in the Alfa Romeo food court or whatever, and they were talking about could Mick Schumacher replace Giovinazzi, and he's ended up in a completely rubbish and useless car. That Haas. It's interesting because I think it was their first season they came 5th. And I remember Kevin Magnussen getting P5 and a Haas, which kind of outlines actually how good both Magnussen and Grosjean were, especially because they knew the team inside out. And 2 rookies just was a recipe for disaster.
If they wanted results, they should have been the drive lineup should have been Magnussen and Schumacher, in my opinion. Magnussen shouldn't have lost his seat. He actually carried Haas for a lot of years. Admittedly, Grosjean got some good results, but Magnussen, in my opinion, was the one that got it, despite not being the nicest person off the grid necessarily. And we've slated Haas. I'm not really going to do it this week because it gets repetitive. They do
that's why I was short and snappy.
Exactly. Joe hasn't gone on a rant for once about them. But Matt, your points are completely right that it's frustrating. They've gone from a team that somehow got fifth in the constructors to now where they're not even competing for 17th, really, unless there's a DNF. It's embarrassing. It's really frustrating. And we talked in the preview about the future of Haas, so check that out if you want to hear our thoughts on it, where we don't rant as much as you probably think we do, but yeah, we do give our thoughts on the future of Haas. That sums up that's the end of giving our thoughts on the team by team breakdown. Let's move on to the final item, which is driver of the day. And there were a few candidates. Matt, you're our guest. I'm going to go to you first. Who, in your opinion, was driver of the day?
I mean, there were some great drives all across the field, really. But I feel like Verstappen P2, especially for the championship and what it means for the rest of the season. I mean, Hamilton's still going to have to take a engine penalty at some race. It'll be interesting to see where he finishes when he takes that penalty. But yeah, Verstappen P2. I mean, he didn't have the best of starts, but to be fair to him, he kept it clean. I remember seeing Mazepin was P13. I was like, how on earth Mazepin gained that many places? Yeah, but Verstappen was just so confident on the brakes, passed Bottas with ease, and yeah, his team made the right strategy call with the inters and got lucky in the pit stops, really, because everyone else, when they pitted, there was some sort of problem. So yeah, my driver of the day is Verstappen.
My driver of the day is going to be Lando. Very heartbreaking. Josh is crying. Well, that's why he's not here. He's ill from the amount of times he's been crying today, from seeing Spurs lose now to having Lando Norris heartbreak of not having a win, his maiden win.
It's been a bad day for Josh.
Yeah, a very bad day. So yeah, I'm going to give it to Lando just due to the fact he dominated the whole race, but the team and partly him kind of let him down in the last leg to go for that win.
Yeah, Lando would have been my driver of the day if it wasn't for the last few laps. And there are a few candidates I need to give a shout out to. People who are close. Raikkonen, as I mentioned, fantastic drive, 13th to 8th, sorry. Really great driving an Alfa Romeo, which hasn't been great in recent weeks, and returning from COVID, that's a really great achievement. And I was so close to picking him, but I didn't because I went for the winner of the race and Mr. 100 wins. It's Lewis Hamilton. And to be honest, I went for Hamilton just because he didn't do anything wrong. He put pressure on whoever was in front of him, forcing him into an error. His team deserve part of this driver of the day because Hamilton didn't really want to come in, but his team were like, no, you need to come in. It's getting heavier. The rain's getting heavier. But yeah, 100 wins. He needs to be recognised. I'm going to give him driver of the day. And apart from even at the start when he lost out on places, it wasn't his fault. He got boxed in completely by people trying to make moves. It wasn't his fault, even though he did get a bit of a slow start. And from there, he excelled. He won the race, 100 wins at last. He deserved my driver of the day. But I also give a shout out to, as well as Raikkonen, Ricciardo did really well, 5th to 4th. Very solid race. He looks so at home in the McLaren now, which is great to see because we all love Danny Rick. And Carlos Sainz, who, as we mentioned earlier, been sensational this season. 2nd to 3rd, admittedly did drop a place. However, none of that was his fault. He literally drove the socks off that car. As Anthony Davidson said in the analysis, he didn't put a foot wrong. If any fault was given to anyone, it'd be the team. He just didn't do anything wrong, and he rescued a podium, which he deserved, to be honest. And that is the end of our review, of the Russian Grand Prix. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. It was a great race, and it was awesome breaking it down and discussing it, because so much happened. It's probably been a long one. If you sticked it out to the end, we appreciate it. Matt, thank you so much. You've stepped in like Nico Hulkenberg did last season. Last minute call up. He came in without any fuss. He was happy to do it, and you gave some great insight, Matt. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Sam.
It's all good, and whenever Josh is ill, we'll give you a call to have you back on. So it'll probably be every week or so. But yeah, Joe, you're here as always, so I don't need to thank you for being here. You actually you are loyal, and you battle illness to be here anyway, even though you're not ill. But if you were ill, I know you'd be here anyway. Josh, poor excuse, mate. But now let's end the podcast on a positive note. Fantastic race. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, download, whatever you need to do. And we'll see you soon for a preview of the Turkish Grand Prix in 2 weeks. We might bring you some content in between. We might not. We'll see. It's us. You never really know. But we'll definitely be back in 2 weeks for a preview. So thank you for watching and listening, and see you guys later.